Simon Peter. Let's start with Peter, the guy everyone remembers. Peter was bold, loud, and kinda impulsive. After Jesus' death, he preached all over, eventually ending up in Rome. The problem? The Roman Emperor Nero wasn't exactly a fan of Christianity. In fact, after the Great Fire of Rome in 64 AD, Nero blamed the Christians. Peter became public enemy number one, so around 64 to 68 AD, Peter was sentenced to crucifixion. But here's where Peter was hardcore. He said he wasn't worthy to die in the same way as Jesus, so he requested to be crucified upside down. And the Romans were like, sure, why not? Weirder the better. After his death, Peter was buried on Vatican Hill. Fast forward a few centuries, and boom, that spot became St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City, one of the most famous churches in the world. Imagine, one guy's painful death turned into the world's most visited cathedral. Andrew, Peter's brother, had a similar fate, just with a creative twist. He traveled around the Black Sea and eventually settled in Patras, Greece. Around 60 AD, he was converting so many people that the local governor, Aegeus, got furious. He even converted Aegeus's wife Maximilia to Christianity. Aegeus demanded Andrew stop preaching. Andrew said nah, and boom, death sentence. But instead of a normal cross, Andrew got tied, not nailed, to an X-shaped cross, which later became known as the St. Andrew's Cross. Why tied? So he'd suffer longer. Lovely. Legend says he preached from that cross for 2 whole days before dying. Crowds gathered, people converted, and the Romans were like, well, that backfired. After his death, Andrew became so famous that different countries fought over his bones. Parts of him ended up in Scotland, which is why the Scottish flag has the St. Andrew's Cross. James the Greater. James, son of Zebedee, was nicknamed Son of Thunder, and thunder he brought because in 44 AD he was the first apostle to be killed. King Herod Agrippa I, grandson of the infamous Herod the Great, ordered James to be executed by sword in Jerusalem. Why? Because James was converting way too many people, and Herod wanted to score political points with Jewish leaders. After James was executed, his followers took his body and, according to tradition, moved his remains all the way to Spain. His tomb became Santiago de Compostela, one of the most famous pilgrimage sites in the world. So yeah, killed by a king, but ended up inspiring millions of travelers for centuries. John, the youngest apostle and writer of the Book of Revelation, had the weirdest ending. He preached in Ephesus, modern Turkey. The Romans tried to kill him. One story says they dunked him in boiling oil, but John pulled a Uno reverse card and survived. Since they couldn't kill him, the Romans just gave up and exiled him to the island of Patmos. On Patmos, John had visions that later became the Book of Revelation. You know, dragons, beasts, end-of-the-world type stuff. Eventually, John died of old age around 100 AD. Out of all the apostles, he's the only one who didn't get murdered. His followers buried him in Ephesus, and people still visit his tomb today. Philip preached in Asia Minor, especially in Hierapolis, modern Turkey. Around 80 AD, Roman officials didn't like his preaching, so they arrested him. He was tortured and crucified upside down. Some legends say he kept preaching even while dying. That's dedication, or stubbornness. After Philip's death, the city of Hierapolis became an important Christian site. Archaeologists even found a tomb believed to be his. So, basically, Philip lost his life, but his grave became a landmark. Bartholomew, aka Nathaniel. Bartholomew was the guy who said, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" when he first heard about Jesus. Spoiler, yes. He took the gospel to India and Armenia, but in Armenia around 68 AD, he made enemies with the local king. Apparently, Bartholomew converted the king's brother, which ticked off the ruler. His punishment? Brutal. He was flayed alive, as in skinned. And if that wasn't enough, some accounts say he was also crucified upside down, others say beheaded. Either way, not good. After his death, relics of Bartholomew were spread across churches in Europe. In Rome, part of his skin and bones are kept in the Basilica of San Bartolomeo, Imagine being remembered for your skin. Dude literally became a human relic collection. Thomas, good old doubting Thomas. He didn't believe Jesus rose until he touched the wounds. After that, he traveled far, all the way to India. In 72 AD, he preached in Chennai, but local rulers got tired of him converting people, so they killed him with spears, multiple spears, like a human pincushion. After his death, his tomb became a pilgrimage site in India, and to this day, Saint Thomas Christians trace their faith back to him. So Thomas doubted once, but millions of people proved his legacy right. Matthew, the former tax collector turned writer of the Gospel of Matthew, took the message to Ethiopia. Around 60 to 70 AD, while celebrating Mass, he was attacked and killed. Accounts differ. Some say stabbed, others burned, others beheaded. The details are fuzzy, but the point is, it didn't end well. After his death, Matthew's relics were taken to Italy, and his tomb can be visited in Salerno. So, tax collector turned apostle turned martyr. James the Less. James the Less led the Jerusalem church. Around 62 AD, Jewish leaders weren't happy with him spreading Christianity. They brought him to the top of the temple in Jerusalem and told him to deny Jesus. He refused, so they pushed him off. Problem? He survived the fall, so the mob beat him with clubs and stones until he died. Brutal. After his death, he was remembered as one of the first leaders of the early church. Basically, James the Less got a boss fight ending. Fall damage plus melee attacks. Thaddeus, aka Jude. Thaddeus, also known as Jude, preached with Simon the Zealot in Persia. Around 65 AD, local rulers didn't like their growing influence, so Jude was beaten with sticks and then killed with an axe. His remains were later brought to Rome, where you can still find his tomb in St. Peter's Basilica. Ironically, Jude is now the patron saint of lost causes, and given how he died, that title makes a lot of sense. Simon the Zealot. Simon, the political firebrand of the group, preached in Persia alongside Jude. Around the same time Jude was killed, Simon was also executed. Some say he was crucified. Others claim he was sawn in half. Either way, it wasn't pretty. After his death, different traditions claimed his relics. Parts of him are said to be buried in Rome, while others say his remains are in Toulouse, France. Simon went global, even after death. A Judas Iscariot. And finally, Judas, the traitor, the one who betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. After realizing what he had done, Judas was crushed with guilt. Around 30 AD in Jerusalem, he ended his own life. Matthew's Gospel says Judas hanged himself. But the book of Acts describes a more graphic ending. Judas fell in a field, burst open, and his insides spilled out. Either way, it was not a noble ending. The field he bought with the blood money became known as the Field of Blood. Judas basically went down in history as the ultimate "don't be this guy" warning. So there you go. Most were killed by Roman rulers, kings, or angry mobs. But even though their deaths were brutal, their legacies lived on. Except Judas, who left behind. If you enjoyed this video, hit subscribe and drop your suggestions for what crazy story I should cover next. Thanks for watching. And remember, history is basically one long series of plot twists.